Peter, back at the trade deadline, you made a statement to the effect that you wanted to watch these guys go through the stretch run in the playoffs, and you also made a statement that I'm not sure was taken quite accurately, but that you didn't see this team as a Stanley Cup team, and
I didn't make this statement like that. Stand the.
let me finish the question. Just with the going ahead, how much work is there to do, and would you now consider yourself that the Stanley Cup window is open for this team?
There's still a fair bit of work to be done. We made a lot of strides this year. Just going through this morning, as a GM, you go back through the metrics from the year before, and really we had significant improvement in pretty much everything. I like where we're at. I think maybe my statement was made on the contending thing was made in the context that we're still a young team, and young, not just necessarily age-wise for each player, but young in experience and young in the playoff context. And I wanted to give the guys, whether it was the young forwards, the young D, our backup goalie, I wanted to give them a chance to succeed. I felt we had made strides and we were going in the right direction, and so I wasn't really into the big game hunting, so to speak, for that. So we have to, from a roster perspective, we've got some significant signings that we have to do in a certain order, and then there's guys that we'd like to have back, and we have to find a way to fit them in. From the analysis that I did just on the numbers, you'd like to improve our face-offs. That will improve just with the guys getting stronger. That will improve with the guys working on it, because we were pretty specific about it in the exit meetings with those centermen, with those people that take draws. Just as an aside, in the exit meeting, I talk about guys getting stronger. I'm sitting there with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and he's getting big. He's getting strong. He's 6'1". He's almost 200 pounds. That will come. He knows that will have to come in his repertoire. That will come. I can see him becoming a man. So part of that falls on us. We have to be on top of these guys to make sure they practice it, and part of it falls on them. So that's an area where we have to improve. Just like from 30,000 feet roster-wise, we built this team. Our plan has been to take it out of the division. So you saw two relatively heavy teams we played against. We played with a certain heaviness. In that definition of heaviness, I put in face-offs, because that's about strength. That's about leaning, and so we have to, as I said, we have to improve in that. We have to. The same way when we acquired David Desharnais, we were deciding where our lines would unfold and how they'd unfold with Leon. We saw him without Connor. We saw him with Connor. I still don't have the answer. My instinct knows where he should be at some point, but I can't tell you that he'll be at that spot to start. So we still have to figure that out, and we've had pro meetings, and I'll continue to kind of mull through that as we move forward. So I know I'm rambling on, Jonesy, but I'm trying to give you some.
Is that Stanley Cup window open now in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I wasn't closed. It was just like I don't know if we were quite ready for it, and maybe in hindsight you look back, we weren't, but it was just taken out of context. Once you get in, anything can happen. Look at Nashville. Look at Edmonton here 10 years, 11 years ago. Look at the number of teams that came in kind of through the back door. So, yes, it's the players have shown through the year resiliency, and then I saw it prominently during the playoffs, and that's the type of character, that's the type of glue, that's the type of makeup you want in a team. And I was very happy with what I saw. I didn't like some of the ways we lost, but I liked some of the ways we won. It's now you're into the next series, and they're all one. Well, the last Anaheim game wasn't, but they're very close games. So yeah, we're the window. Absolutely, we're in that spot.
Peter, going into the season, did this team kind of exceed expectations that you guys had for them?
Sorry, I didn't hear the.
Did the team exceed expectations?
Yeah, they did. They did. I had us in meaningful games in March. That's kind of so. That's the. I've been saying 85 points. 87 made it the year before. So, I was. I had it kind of had us in and around the playoffs. What happened was, and what happens is that the team starts developing a real identity and starts feeling good about itself, and that's what you saw at the end. And that was a leap that I hadn't projected, but it carried into the playoffs. I thought we had a good series against San Jose, and we had a good series against Anaheim. There was a couple of results I didn't like, but that's that uptick at the end. I mean, that was a bonus, and everyone went along for the ride. So now we've got players that have played in a playoff drive, young players and young, old, whatever, in a playoff drive. We've got players that have played in 2 rounds of playoffs and a heavy series. So I was banking on the meaningful games and maybe the playoffs, and that to me was a 15 to 20 point improvement from the year before. We exceeded that.
Peter, do you have any concerns about the expansion draft? A lot of teams have some concerns in terms of maybe they got to protect, don't have enough forwards, or don't have enough defensemen, or whatever. Do you have any concerns with the expansion draft?
Everyone has issues, like in the sense that they're going to lose somebody. We went through the expansion landscape mid-season and just recently in our pro meetings, and everyone knows who is most vulnerable. We're in the middle of the pack. We're going to lose a player, and we have to decide who we want to protect. These are obvious statements, and I'm not going to tell you who we're going to protect, but we're going to lose a player that we'd prefer to keep. So that speaks to, there are a number of teams that they can afford to lose players. Not afford, but there are players that they lose them. They're like, you know what, we can replace them. The guys that we might lose, it's like there's a little more meaning to them for me. Like I think based on our success we had, and they were part of the success.
Peter, down the stretch in March, Eberle, Lucic, and Nugent-Hopkins showed up and produced for you. In the postseason, Eberle and Nugent-Hopkins didn't have a goal each. How do you balance evaluating players that helped you get into the playoffs, played very well, and then in the playoffs were nothing? I know it was only the first time for both of them. There's a long history of other guys not showing up, but how do you put that into your equation going forward with those two specifically? And can you maybe say what in your exit meeting you wanted from Eberle as far as an improvement? You mentioned face-offs for Nuge. What are you looking for an improvement from?
Well, how do I evaluate? It is their first time, but if we're going to talk about those two specifically, it is their first time in the playoffs, and it's a different animal. And we saw some people thrive. We saw others muddle along. We saw guys struggle. So I have to be careful. We have to be careful how we evaluate. I know there's been a lot during the course of the playoffs written about those two. I think unfairly, but I understand the position everyone's taking because they're not producing and we have other guys producing. Over the years, I've seen people get into the playoffs and like, holy cow, this is something completely different, and they figure it out, and going forward, they're meaningful contributors. I saw it on a number of occasions in Boston. So we have to be careful. With regard to Ebbs, he was our third leading scorer. He gets a lot of touches. I like his cycle game in his own way. Like he creates space in his own way because he's quick and he's smart. I know there's some board work issues that he's been better at. I know there's been some flashes of his game that I really like from a power perspective. and that's not something you usually associate with Ebbs. Like I saw something in his game that I haven't seen. He didn't do it consistently. So we talked about his approach as to mentally, as to scoring and what's his routine, and maybe there's some things we can look at. He's a very skilled player, and I know there were some things from his game that were under the spotlight in a negative fashion, but he's a guy who's in the playoffs for the first time, and I like the way he finished. He was our third leading scorer. So again, I guess the takeaway from that is we have to be careful about how we evaluate him.
Peter, can you just address the blue line? And I mean, heading into last season, there was the thought that a power play defenseman perhaps might have been on the list of needs for you. From what you saw this year, do you feel like you have a top four somewhere in there that can be a championship top four? Or do you feel like you still need to supplement the top four a little?
I think for now, Ryan, I think I'm pretty happy with the D. With regard to the power play, we made a significant improvement in the power play without a pure power play D. There's different ways to evaluate a power play. There's different ways to run a power play. Traditionally, there has been that puck mover, the guy with the shot, or ideally the guy who has both. We don't have that guy, but we've got solid thinkers, and I think when you look to the power play and the results, I think you see that can be a successful formula. As far as do we have a championship D-core, I'm not sure yet. There's still an element of growth in our D. If you look at Clef, Lars, and then you take out Reggie and Russ just because they're older. Then you got Darnell, and you've got Matt. You got some young D, and you got young D who had some terrific experience in this playoff. You saw Darnell move up with Larson, and I think you saw a good pair. So you see some promise there. You saw Benning move up with Russell. You saw some good performances. So there's room for growth. We have to allow space for that. We made some major additions this past year. I'd like to let it evolve a little bit. However, I do see like two probably the best D-core in our conference playing right now in the league in Anaheim and Nashville. It's fun to watch both their D, and it'd be nice to have a D at that level. We're not there yet.
Peter, you talked when you first took the job. You talked obviously about got to get better in goal, got to get much improved on defense, bigger up front. But you also talked about the importance of having a team that has the right culture and the right identity. How far do you think the group has come in that regards? And with any future moves, will that be part of the equation in terms of figuring out who you're going to bring in? That it's got to be a guy that's got to be able to coexist moving forward with this team.
Yeah, I mean, the culture thing is overplayed a bit. I think just obviously it's you have to have the right way to do business, the right way of thinking, the right philosophy. Culture is another word for it. What I was saying earlier, that last uptick that we had when the guys started really saying, "Holy cow, we're like we can beat, on any given night we can beat everybody, and let's do this as we strive towards the playoffs." That really cemented a lot of the culture. The base was there, but that drive, and then the playoffs, and then the failures and the successes in playoffs, that really helped it. So anytime, in my experience, anytime you look to add somebody, there has to be an ability to coexist in some shape or form, and so that's always going to be in the equation. And that's what I can tell you on that.
Last year, you made the Taylor Hall-Larson trade. Are you going forward with an idea of wanting to pull off something resembling that again? And where are you at in terms of prioritizing, for example, the signing of Draisaitl and McDavid and the salary cap?
I can't tell you, Jonesy, if we're going to do a deal like that again. That was a tough one, and I maybe want to take a break for a summer on that one. I say that because I don't want to to delve too much into moving the team's roster around, just because we've had some success and you'd like to see it evolve a little bit. Again, order of events is, and we can't officially sign Connor till July 1, but I have to, it's going to be Connor, then Leon, and then we've got a cluster of other guys that I'd like to have back, but I got to get through those. Cap-wise, yeah, it's we're okay next year. We could basically stay the same, and it's the following year when Mr. McDavid's contract will kick in. So I have to be cognizant of that. But we've got a lot of different rosters that we've looked at, in the sense that at numbers for specific guys, terms. But Cap's expected to stay flat or raise a little bit. So we're working off of 73, 74, 75 and see where it's at. We certainly will have the resources to put another contending team in place.
Peter, you just mentioned you want to let this group evolve, but having reached the second round, Game 7, and exceeding expectations, does it expedite things for you moving forward? Does the window get kind of a bit smaller as opposed to maybe a 4 or 5?
I can't believe we're talking about a window.
Well, I'm just...
Are you just talking about the cap perspective, because we're going to pay Connor and Leon a lot of money?
Yeah. And just them achieving this much success so soon.
Well, we won a round, but so I guess your key question is, are we expediting things? I don't think so. No, we're nothing has really changed in the way we're going to approach building this team, and you saw us not going out and getting a rental, like we did get David, but really getting a high end rental, because we wanted to allow our guys to grow. That's going to be hopefully we'll get some guys that'll come back into our roster next year that are younger and that can grow with it. Part of that is kind of the deeper roots of a team when you get those young guys that come in. You guys know that, but also part of it is that's the reality sometimes because of the cap, because you're going to have to pay other guys a lot of money. So trying to team build, but we're still going to be patient. But we can still have success, and we can still have incremental success, because I think if we stay the course, that these young guys will contribute, and we'll still get the meaningful contributions from the current team.
Peter, you talked about Leon in the middle versus on the wing. Can you maybe discuss the timeline for making that determination and how it affects the shape of your roster? If he's going to be consistently on the wing, then that changes what you need on the wing. Do you need to leave yourself more depth through the middle for that scenario? It kind of, where he plays is important in terms of the shape of your top six.
So that was 4 hours of our pro meetings right there, Ryan. So, I can give you a snapshot. It's kind of consistent with what I said at the deadline. I want to give our coach the ability to flip-flop, because it changes the tempo of the game. It can change the nature of the game. Unfortunately, you can't really, then that means, pushing Nuge to a lower third pair or third line. And it may be, I'm not saying it's unfair to Nuge, but it's, because he's a team guy, and that's one thing he stressed in his exit meetings. But in the ideal world, it'd be nice to have set centers and a big center like Leon as your center, not your wing. But this is about versatility, and it means, as far as team building, it means getting a guy who can play the wing and play center, who might be a center and can take faceoffs. We have players like that in Boston, the Chris Kellys, the guys that can play both but can take faceoffs. So David Desharnais showed that he could do that at the end on a smaller level or lesser level, but he did that. So it means we got to dig a little deeper. But I want to make sure that our coach has the ability to change his lineup game to game and in game, and so I can't I can't really go out and firm up a lineup. I have to be a little more resourceful.
Peter, just here in the back, we're talking about exit meetings. Can you give us maybe just an idea of the vibe, the feel you got from the players in the exit meetings this year regarding the belief in themselves what's being done and that something can be done regarding the Cup maybe sooner rather than later compared to how it may have been this time last year?
Well, they were positive, and I think you got the gist of them when you had your media interaction with them following the meetings. You know, the theme that we stressed and the theme that they responded to in the meetings was, you know, our challenge will be, and you heard this, our challenge will be next year we can't fall back. And so now the bar is set higher, and we've seen instances where teams make the playoffs and have a little bit of success and then drop, and then it's tough to recover. So so there's that kind of get to work mentality that we saw throughout the meetings. Not satisfied. Yeah, I mean, but generally they were, you know, it's nice, the most positive meetings I've been part of in 2 or 3 years. So, but you have to scrutinize. You got to examine parts of the games, of their specific games that have to be improved. But they, to a man, they're looking forward to next year, and job incomplete, and they were positive.
We never did ask what happened to Sekera.
Yes, ACL, torn ACL. He'll be 6 to 9 months. He's going to have surgery. I think Thursday.
Not very much of a hit, and he tore his ACL.
No, it was unfortunate, and yeah.
A couple other things. The draft. You don't have a second-round draft choice, but you have a late first-round pick, way later than normal. Are you still going to try to get a second-round pick somehow?
You know, we have 2/3 and we have 2/5, and we'll see how that what the draft board comes down as we come towards the end of the first. I'm not really consumed by that. It's a good year not to have a second. It's a little deeper than maybe the pundits have said, but it drops off so. But history shows you get those like a third versus a second. It's really not. So I'm not going to go out of my way if something comes across our lap close to our pick in the first, we may look to trade down and get another pick in the second.
Last thing, you mentioned Connor was your number one priority to sign, and then Leon. Chris Russell, you're not going to try to sign him before July 1st, so you're going to let him go to free agency?
I didn't say that, but we might. But I have to have certainty on those other two, and that's what I've told Chris. I want to have Chris back. I thought he was really good for our team. I thought the way he approaches the game, the way he battles, his poise, his skating, I thought it was a really good compliment to our group.
Peter, can you just comment, start of the year to now, excuse me, on Puljujärvi's development? And obviously he's a healthy scratch at the Worlds right now, kind of what you're hearing about maybe what's happening over.
Was he scratched today?
Don't know yet. It was supposed to be game time decision, but was the other day, so we're not sure on today yet. But just Puljujärvi's year in general.
Well, it was. I think if you would ask him, he'd say it was frustrating. I know. I met with him a couple times throughout the year, and he was very frustrated with his game. And it's a tough league, the American League. And when he was up here, I thought he started well, and he lost some confidence, so we ended up sending him down. I saw him play a few times down there, and I saw a lot of his video. He actually had a pretty good year. I think he had 29 points in 39 games. And he could have easily had, I think he had 12 goals. He could have easily had 20 goals. He missed a lot of goals. He was good for a breakaway period. So I liked his game down there. We debated whether to send him to Cologne at the end. The original plan was that we would have made the playoffs in Bakersfield, we wanted him to experience playoffs and then to bring him up to us. But this was a little bit of a duplicate. I'm happy with it. I've seen young 18-year-olds play in the American League. I've seen some outperform him. I've seen most not. He's just frustrated. He's a young kid from northern Finland, and when I talked to him, he's frustrated that he wasn't scoring. And I said, you just worry about your wall work. You worry about the stuff behind the red line. on the defensive side of the red line. And don't worry about the offense. I have no issues with the offense. So I think he has a little trouble not accepting. He's a very understanding kid. Just knowing that he has that period of apprenticeship that maybe he didn't think he was going to have. So, but he's a good kid. He was really happy to go over there. And Yuri Lettinen said, like, he's going to be one of the group. So he's played in some games. I didn't know he'd be a scratch today, but that's not surprising based on what Yuri said. So I'm happy with his development. I've seen players perform not as well in the American League that have become very good players. He's going to be an impact player. Every time he touches the puck in the American League, it pretty much turns into a scoring chance.
Peter, with the McDavid's contract, most people assume, obviously, and you agreed, it's going to be a big cap hit. Does that make you more leery at all of a potential Draisaitl offer sheet if you don't get it done before July 1st? Does that put an urgency on you to get that deal done just to ensure that there's no other team that says, you know what, we'll try to put the screws to them and get Leon, because you can get him, I think, even at $9 million and not have to give up 4 first-rounders to do that. Is the offer sheet more of a potential because of McDavid's new contract coming, do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, we have a lot of cap space to match, so I don't know, other than to penalize us, and I don't know why a team would do that, but I mean, from a predatory perspective, it would just be purely inflationary because we have a ton of cap space to match. But who knows? I mean, those things usually wait to and maybe you're referring to at any point if you can't get them signed and as you lead into the year. So that becomes more ripe then. But Leon's representative, Leon, they told us they want to stay and they want to be part of a team building process, and so I don't anticipate any problem there. Okay. Yeah, I mean, they're playing at 2, right? 2 Eastern.